This season, UEFA have changed the Champions League from its well-known form of 8 groups featuring 4 teams, with the top 2 going through and the third place sides dropping into the Europa League. This season we've got the first edition of the 36-team league phase, with all 18 final league matches kicking off at the same time this week. The changes to the format were meant to ensure that nearly every game had something riding on it, rather than seeing a lot of meaningless fixtures at the end of group stages, which would happen quite frequently in groups involving 2 of Europe's stronger sides, or 2 of the weaker sides. And it seems to have worked, with there being only 2 out of the 18 final day fixtures contested by teams with nothing to play for. It'll be interesting to see what happens on the final day, with the league positions guaranteed to change around multiple times throughout the course of Wednesday night, but it could be absolute chaos. I'm going to give you my predictions for Wednesday night's matches, as well as the final standings and how the knockout stages would look should my predictions come true. There are only 2 teams guaranteed of a top 8 finish. Liverpool and Barcelona are there, but they aren't necessarily going to be the top 2. Liverpool will win the league phase if they draw in Eindhoven, but Barcelona could steal it if they win and Liverpool lose. Arsenal could still finish second if they win in Girona and Barcelona fail to beat Atalanta, and while Arsenal's top 8 finish isn't guaranteed, they'll need a string of exceptionally unlucky results as well as a huge negative swing in goal difference if they're to drop down into the playoff places. Aston Villa play Celtic at Villa Park in their final fixture, with both clubs guaranteed at least a playoff, while Villa will get into the top 8 if they beat Celtic and only one of the teams above them slips up. That's as long as 2 of the teams behind them don't win by huge scores and overtake them on goal difference. Celtic can still finish in the top 8, but that's about as likely as Arsenal dropping out of it. It's just not going to happen. But what about Manchester City? They're having a simply awful Champions League campaign, and while they're still sitting outside the playoff places, their task is very simple. Beat Club Brugge and qualify for the playoffs, fail to beat them and they're eliminated, which will be seen as a huge failure for the 2023 winners. It couldn't actually happen, could it? So let's take a look at the fixtures, and here are my predictions, starting with the 2 meaningless games. And those are Sturm Graz against RB Leipzig and Young Boys against Red Star Belgrade. I'm going for a 3-0 win for Leipzig, who have been awful in this competition, and a 2-0 victory for Red Star Belgrade, so that would mean Young Boys finishing without a single point. I'm aiming to run through these ties by order of importance, and while these games all have something riding on them, I'm going to consider the teams who aren't guaranteed a playoff place as higher risk, so I'm going to save the games involving Man City and PSG until right at the end. Let's go for Barcelona against Atalanta next. Barcelona are the only team who can still overtake Liverpool, though it's highly unlikely that they will. Atalanta are sitting in the top 8 themselves, and though they have a very good goal difference, it's unlikely they'll keep their place in the top 8 unless they win at the Nou Camp. And I don't think they will. Barcelona have just been so good in the Champions League this season, and I think they'll guarantee their top 2 finish with a 2-0 win. So the next 4 fixtures involve one team that's guaranteed of a playoff and another team who will be going out. These games can be hit or miss, as you might find the eliminated team playing without any fear and as a result being dangerous, or you could see them roll over as a result of not caring. So we've got Leverkusen against Sparta Prague, Bayern Munich against Slovan Bratislava, Girona v Arsenal, and RB Salzburg against Atletico Madrid. Arsenal are all but guaranteed to be in the top 8. Atletico will guarantee it if they win, while Leverkusen will do so should they win, unless one of the teams behind them scores a lot of goals. It's actually Bayern Munich who will need to rely on other results though, and I don't think it's likely that enough of the teams above them drop points. I've gone for wins for all 4 of these teams, which should be enough for 3 of them, but let me know your predictions in the comments. So here's where the ties start to get really interesting. These next 4 fixtures involve teams who are all guaranteed of at least a playoff, but some of them can still make the top 8. We've got Villa against Celtic, Brest against Real Madrid, Inter Milan play Monaco, and Lille against Feyenoord. Of those, it's only Inter who are currently occupying a top 8 place, so a win against Monaco would guarantee their progress to the last 16. Incredibly, its current holders Real Madrid, who alongside Celtic are the least likely of those sides to make it into the top 8, and would need a very favourable set of results, but it is still possible. Villa, Brest, Monaco, Lille and Feyenoord all have 13 points, so it's going to be exciting to see which of them make it through and which of them have to settle for a playoff. I've gone for draws between Inter and Monaco and Lille and Feyenoord and wins for Aston Villa and Real Madrid, and I'll show the final table when I've gone through all the other fixtures. I've highlighted Sporting against Bologna because it's an interesting one. Sporting were in such a good position until Ruben Amorim left, and now they're in danger of an early exit. A draw should be enough to see them through. Unless Man City beat Bruges and Stuttgart managed to stun PSG, I've gone for them winning 1-0 though, so I don't think they'll have to worry. Bologna could be dangerous though, so let's see what happens. These next few fixtures could get really frantic, so let's talk about some of the other teams who are in danger and some of the other clubs who are guaranteed at least a playoff place. Firstly, it's current leaders Liverpool, who only need a draw against PSV Eindhoven to guarantee they'll win the league phase. PSV aren't assured of a playoff place themselves though. It would take an extremely unlucky sequence of events to see them eliminated in the league phase, however, but I think Liverpool win this 2-1. Then we've got Dortmund against Shakhtar Donetsk, Dinamo Zagreb against AC Milan and Juventus play Benfica. Juventus, Milan and Dortmund are assured of a playoff place at least, while Shakhtar, Zagreb and Benfica will need to get a result on the day. Out of those three teams, only Benfica currently occupy a playoff place, though that would change quickly if they were to lose against Juventus. Realistically, a draw should be enough to guarantee Benfica a playoff place, but the only way to guarantee it is to win. Shakhtar can technically still reach the playoffs, but they'll need a miraculous set of results to go their way, including at least a 6-goal swing in their favour to overcome their poor goal difference. Dinamo Zagreb have to beat AC Milan and hope that enough of the teams on 10 points lose. AC Milan will finish in the top 8 if they win in Zagreb. Juventus and Dortmund could still avoid a playoff, but it's very unlikely they'll get the automatic places. Out of these games, I think Benfica will get the draw at Juventus, but Shakhtar and Dinamo Zagreb will both lose. And finally, here's the two fixtures that I've highlighted. We have two games featuring teams who haven't got anything guaranteed yet. Let's start with Stuttgart against PSG, and both teams are sitting on 11 points, and while a draw will definitely be enough to see PSG into the playoffs, Stuttgart know they will have to win, unless of course Manchester City fail to beat Club Bruges, in which they could still squeeze into the playoff places with a draw. I don't think they'll be strong enough to beat PSG. I'm saying this one ends 1-3. So what about Manchester City? Well, it's a very simple equation for them. Win and qualify for the playoffs, fail to win, and the unthinkable happens. They exit the competition at the league phase. Surely they'll beat Club Bruges, won't they? City have been simply awful in their last few Champions League games. They looked like they were going to win in Paris, but they threw it all away. And knowing they only need a draw will give the Belgians a lot of confidence going into this one. I can see a really tense night at the Etihad with few chances for the visitors, but City struggling to break them down. I do think Manchester City will eventually get the goal they need though and sneak a win here. I don't think this will be easy, and I wouldn't be surprised if Club Bruges get a couple of chances late on just to keep the home fans on edge. But I'm going to say City win this one 1-0. Okay, so there's my predictions, and I've entered them into the table calculator, and here's how the final table will look if my results all come true, which of course they won't. Liverpool are the only team with a 100% record, so they win the league phase, so avoid second place Barcelona until the final. Arsenal's win puts them in third. Atletico and AC Milan both overtake Inter Milan, who still qualify for the last 16. Then it's Leverkusen and Aston Villa who sneak into the top 8. What an incredible achievement that would be for Villa in their first season back in the Champions League since the 80s. Look at some of these big names who have to go into the playoffs. Bayern, Dortmund, Real Madrid, all with 2 extra games to play. 9th to 16th will be seeded and have an important home tie in the second leg of their playoff matches against one of the 17th to 24th ranked teams. So let's take a look at who makes up the unseeded playoff places. PSG have just managed to sneak into a seeded position while Juventus drop into the unseeded places. Celtic and Manchester City are in the playoffs and City's opponents finish in 24th, so sneak in despite losing at the Etihad. No real surprises with the teams who have exited the competition though, with the exception of maybe Leipzig. So what would that mean for the playoff brackets? Well, apparently there's a draw to decide which pair of teams goes into which bracket. Then it's a structured draw from that point. So here's mine. I've only selected one half of the draw, as the other will be the opposite of this one. So in the playoffs, it's Juventus or Sporting against Lille or PSG, PSV Eindhoven or Club Brugge versus Bayern or Dortmund, Manchester City or Benfica play Real Madrid or Atalanta, and it's Brest or Celtic against Monaco or Feyenoord. The other half of that bracket would just be the alternate side to that draw, so there's obviously one potential tie that stands out. Could it be Manchester City against Real Madrid as early as the playoff round? Would City even beat Atalanta the way they're playing at the moment? The draw does go a bit further than that though too, and again I've only selected one side of the draw because the rest, well, it's self-explanatory. So Liverpool or Barcelona would face the path involving PSG and Juventus, so there's some potentially amazing ties there. Aston Villa or Leverkusen would play the winners of the path involving the two German giants. Either one of the Milan clubs would drop onto the path with Manchester City and Real Madrid. Let's not forget Atalanta or Benfica though, so that's a very tricky bracket right there. And lastly, Arsenal or Atletico Madrid would face the winners of Celtic's path, which, no disrespect to the teams involved, but it looks a lot more favourable than any of the other brackets. Those pairs of teams you see to the right of the screen, they're separated now until the Champions League final. So for example, the two Milan clubs wouldn't meet until the final. Arsenal can't play Atletico, etc, etc. But let's not forget, this is totally based on my predictions, and we know that things are going to turn out differently. So this is just to give you an idea of how it works. Let me know your predictions for Wednesday night in my comments section. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed this content, and why not check out this list I made ranking the best Champions League comebacks of all time. Thanks for watching.